Netrokona. This has happened on the intervening night of the 23rd and the 24th of this month. The radicals have vandalized idols to stop Saraswati Puja celebrations. We've got the pictures coming through these videos, which we are putting out here, very clearly show how these radicals have entered the temple. They have desecrated the shrine, destroyed the temple, damaged their temple premises. The attack happened on the night of 23rd January. The government, the Indian government has also gotten involved. The local High Commission there taking cognizance. Top government sources are telling CNN News 18 that this is nothing but the latest in a spate of crimes which are against the Hindu community in Bangladesh, attack in temples, and it's on the rise in the recent past, especially through 2022. And that also brings across or raises a lot of concern because despite Sheikh Hasina and her disposition being friendly and also assuring that the radicals will not be given a free run, the fundamentalists seem to be gaining ground in Bangladesh. This is the latest coming through. They have attacked the temple in the Purbadala market of Netrokona. This is the latest coming through. We will try and go across to our guest straight away. Major General Dhruv Katoch is with us, Director, India Foundation, and Pathikrit Paint, security analyst, also with us. Namaste, gentlemen. First to Pathikrit. A series of attacks that we've seen right through 2022. And this only seems to be rising. With every Hindu festival, there is some shrine or the other, some temple or the other that is desecrated, some pandal, and absolute disrespect. And invariably, the perpetrators tend to get away. The local police reacts, they don't act.
First of all, Anand, Hindus, somebody said it right, are the new Jews of the world. And temples are their punching bags. Unfortunately, wherever they find it difficult to settle scores with India, the radicals, extremists have always targeted temples and Hindus. There's a surprising element in what happens in Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, wherever there is a desecration of a Hindu temple or something happens, even if a perpetrator is caught, he is termed as mentally unstable. And on that pretext, he is let off. He's always, this is the norm. Secondly, even though the regime of Sheikh Hasina is extremely pro-India, but there are elements within her party itself who, for the sake of making sure that their reign does not go away and their stranglehold on the country does not go away, they have allowed a lot of elements to do things in the name of normal petty fights. They give a communal turn to it. And we know what happens in Pakistan. That's a no given. For India government, it's a complex challenge whether to go all out against government of Bangladesh or whether to keep on engaging them. I think the bigger problem, Anand, is that Hindus of this country has never identified with the plight of Hindus of other countries. That is a major problem. The problem is that, successively for decades, temples in this country has been weakened, emancipated. Our funds of the temples have been taken away by state governments, and that's why the organizations that the church and the Islamic communities have to fight for anything that happens to their religion or people of their religion in other countries. That's something that you don't find in this country, in India. Unfortunately, Hindus often find it very difficult to associate themselves by terming Hindu. They would say that I associate ourselves with India, and there's no doubt about that. But to the moment somebody asks them to associate themselves with the issue of Hindus in other countries, somewhere they start feeling that, oh, I might be tagged as communal and not secular enough. So this kind of a taboo culture that has started probably in the last 30, 40 years, education system is also part of it, is one prime reason that things don't happen the way it should have been in terms of taking a stand. Government is doing its part, but the government has its own complex challenges.
Taking a stand in the interest of Hindus cannot be termed as bigotry. You are not talking down any other faith. You are talking the interest. You are talking about the interest of a community or a faith, because vandalizing any desecration of any religious place, any place of prayer or worship, is condemnable, and there has to be an equivocal condemnation of this. But General Katoch, as I come across to you, let me ask you this. Is the Awami League losing grip? Are the fundamentalists on the rise? Is the JMB and the other organizations which are also getting hyperactive in Assam in our country, are they gaining ground there? Pathikrit believes that there are elements within Sheikh Hasina's party and outfit itself who are allowing a free run for these radicals because they want to stay in control. But is there another dimension to this?
Thank you, Anand. Anand, yes, I think there is another dimension because whenever within Bangladesh there is the desire to attain power, to get into control, and the opposition there takes the support of the Jamaat, and the Jamaat has always been violent and anti-minorities. If you notice that even in 1971, when the liberation war took place, it was the Jamaat which was fighting the people of Bangladesh. And they have continued to do so. And once post 1975, those activities continued. So we find within Bangladesh, a large section of that society has radicalized. It is not simply a question of a political party. A large number of Muslims in Bangladesh have radicalized, not to the extent of Pakistan, but certainly to a very large extent, where in pockets they create violence. And I think it has become a fashion now to hit at Hindu temples. The question, the discussion which was taking place earlier between you and Pratriket let me put my thoughts into that also. You see, since 1947, for a very long time, when atrocities took place in Pakistan and including in the present day Bangladesh, India kept quiet. As a government, we kept quiet. That was the whole point. And the media never raked it up again, perhaps due to lack of knowledge or for whatever reason. It is only now that it is being raked up. I think it is important because when all such when all such incidences take place, if India does not speak, then the host country gets further emboldened where these atrocities are taking place. But for India, a double tragedy took place. When Hindu temples have been desecrated in India, I'm afraid India still did not speak. When a genocide took place in India in 1990, I'm afraid India still did not speak. So, what do the people of Pakistan and Bangladesh think? They think Hindus are soft targets. They can be killed in India. Then why can't we kill them here? I think we need to change our policies. Very strong messages need to be sent across. And as people told, no more. If you do it, there will be consequences for that country, and that consequences could be economic, political, diplomatic, or any other means. But there needs to be consequences, and the world community also take note. We are even finding out it is a shameful matter that in Australia this trend has started, where the third temple has been vandalized now.
Yes, third temple has been vandalized. There again, the intent is very clear. There is a bunch of park-backed vandals who are wanting to push a secessionist narrative, and they are trying to get some attention, desperately trying to get some attention ahead of certain agenda that they want to pursue towards the end of the month. So very clearly, it's not getting them traction, but they're targeting temples. Why should the Hindu temples be so easily targeted, and why should anything to do with India, Indian culture, Indian ethos be so easily targeted? And nobody thinks twice about doing that. These are questions which rankle. However, we have to move on here. Plenty of stories that we need to track over the next 45 minutes. So Pathikrit Pain and General Katoch will shift focus. Let's talk about the SCO meeting. The SCO meeting, which is going to be held in May this year in Goa. And India has sent a formal invite. Subramaniam Jaishankar extending an invite to his counterpart, Bilawal Bhutto. So far, there is confirmation that Bilawal Bhutto has received the invite, but there is no reaction from there whether or not Pakistan will attend. At a time when Shahbaz Sharif is raising the peace flag, but they still not wanting to drop the Kashmir narrative, a nation that finds itself crippled economically, going through this entire financial crisis, exposed as Terroristan, exposed as a nation which is not for minorities and even for other sects, many sects of Islam. This nation, should they be actually extended an invite as far as the SCO? And should they even dare to set foot in India? General Katoch, let me start with you. Should Bilawal Bhutto, who's a known Kashmir hawk, who's been actually propped up by the ISI to continually berate India and try to tom-tom this Kashmir narrative, not just in this region but also in the West, should that person be entertained?
On this particular issue, because SCO has got nothing to do with the dispute between India and Pakistan or what is currently happening in Jammu and Kashmir. It is a different body with a different set of purposes, and I think as India has extended that invite, whether Bilawal Bhutto comes or not, that is his choice. But I think from our side, the invite has to be extended to all member countries, and to state that one country with whom we have a difference will not be invited. I don't think that will be appropriate diplomatic behavior on our part. So the question is that, okay, Bilawal Bhutto, he's been sent the invite. In my assessment, I think he will come. And in my second assessment, I don't think he will talk about Jammu and Kashmir during his stay in India.
But could there be ulterior designs? This is the man who waged this campaign against Nawaz Sharif in 2016, where he said, Modi ka jo yaar hai, wo gaddar hai. This is what he went around saying in POJK and also in other provinces of Pakistan. Pathikrit Pain, should this man be allowed?
Anand, meetings of multilateral forums are like World Cups. Whether we like it or not, you have to invite all the member states. And so by that standard, by default, by that norm of Pakistan would have to send an invitation. But after his outburst against the Prime Minister of India in United Nations, I think Bilawal Bhutto knows what is waiting for him. He might be hounded in India as well. So I don't know whether he would come. I'm not sure. But yes, I think that there are stringent norms that he would also be aware, because if he does something in India in terms of raising some nonsense that he generally does, then there will be consequences. And the consequences today is no more just about what India does, but also the kind of clout that India has, whether it's on IMF or other countries, in terms of completely drying up whatever little flow of money is going into Pakistan right now. So I think he would be, if at all there is a bureaucracy still working in Pakistan, he would be briefed properly that here don't make a mess, because a lot is at stake. I think that is the reason. Russia would also be there, China would also be there. So from that perspective, it is important to understand that while we extend the Greek,
can we ever expect them to behave? If a Prime Minister of Pakistan and Imran Khan could not behave at the UNGA, how do you expect a Bilawal Bhutto to even behave at an SCO? That's another question. Does he even have the maturity for that? And he's somebody who's called some very deplorable terms. Our Prime Minister, he's addressed him with some very deplorable terms, terms which have got no basis itself and absolutely devoid of facts. Why should such a person be even entertained? Should that person not be persona non grata is another question. There is no intent to cooperate, because can trade and terror go hand in hand? Is another question that rankles. But we've just got more information about this nation that is in absolute financial doldrums. There is no end to Pakistan's economic woes. News coming in, and this is the CNN News 18 exclusive, where the IMF, or the International Monetary Fund, has refused to visit Pak. They've held a virtual review meeting. The Pak finance team held a meeting on the 9th, and that was, they held the 9th review meeting. Then this was held on Tuesday. The IMF has set two conditions for financial review and fresh loans. The IMF has asked Pakistan to apply new taxes. The IMF has asked Pakistan to pass 200 billion rupees mini budget. And they have told them that unless you measure up to the previous clauses, there is no extension of fresh loan, or nor are we coming down to visit. General Katoch.
Anand, I think Pakistan is in very serious trouble. Whether they get whether they get a loan from the IMF, which is highly unlikely at this moment, or not, I think they are in very serious trouble, and it arises basically from flawed policies which have been existing for many years now, for a few decades, I will say. It arises from a false sense of security by which they have used terrorism as an instrument of foreign policy. But having said that, I think these two were still manageable. What they will find impossible to manage, as they are experiencing now, is the third condition which has actually come up within Pakistan, that is political instability. And this instability has been caused by Imran Khan himself, because he, for whatever reason, is the most popular leader within Pakistan. And should an election be held today, whether Imran Khan is good or bad for the people, I'm not here to consider. But the fact remains, if there is an election held today, Imran Khan will win. And that is something which the opposition cannot accept. Neither can the army. So there is going to be a period of very great instability. His number 2 man has been arrested today. Whether Imran Khan gets arrested, I'm not sure. But the point is, this instability will not allow them to change. Number 2, as far as the IMF condition of setting taxes, Now, Pakistanis are not even able to pay the present set of taxes. How far can you tax these people? Their electricity rates have jumped through the roof. Gas prices are astonishingly high. The Pakistani rupee is worth one third of an Indian rupee. It is something like 300 Pakistani rupees are required to the dollar. Everything is going wrong for them. And they don't have the political power in the center to sort it out. I'm afraid this instability will continue, and India needs to keep a watch on what is happening in Pakistan.
Now we've got more inputs coming through on this front, where Pakistan is actually considering, the government is considering different proposals, including that of slashing the salaries of all government employees by 10% across the board amid this entire economic crisis. There are also talks of raising the costs of petrol and diesel by at least by 15%. That's also the talks which are currently on. At this point, as we speak, the Pakistani rupee stands at 231 Pakistani rupees to $1. And that's how their currency is slipping. The inflation rate, second highest in the region. So clearly financial trouble. But Pratikrit Pine, this nation, should it be taught a lesson? Should anybody give it a helping hand till it mends its ways?
Let me tell you, Anand, interestingly, the solution that IMF is providing right now to Pakistan is more complex than the problem itself. This will help in their implosion even faster because the prices. So what the government has been told is that you raise your taxes, you reduce to increase your revenue, and you reduce your expenditures, which means raising taxes would invariably make things more difficult to purchase, which means inflation will go up, and to reduce expenditure means they have to reduce expenditure on defense also, which the deep state will not want. That's a very, very catch-22 situation for them. See, IMF on the face of it cannot say that we will not give you any loan at all, so they're putting these complex conditions which the Pakistanis will not be able to handle at all. So this kind of a situation actually can be manageable, and India did manage 30 years back because the political environment and the security environment was good enough for foreign direct investment to come in. There is nothing like that in Pakistan. So on economic front, on ethnic front, on social front, on security front, there is an implosion of Pakistan happening where each is helping as a catalyst to make the other move further. As the economic condition becomes more difficult to manage, the idea of Pakistan as it is, if at all there was something, is actually going away, and Tehrik-e-Taliban will become stronger, sectarian violence will increase, terrorism will increase, and yet in spite of all these things, Anand, the rich and the elite will keep on buying expensive cars. In last 6 months, they bought 1.2 billion worth of cars, 2,200 vehicles, luxury vehicles, Pakistan actually allowed to buy by the elite. So I don't think the Pakistan as a country will survive. IMF has put a condition that there will be a free flow of dollar. Dollar can be used as a currency in Pakistan, which means they are doing away with the role of the Central Bank of Pakistan, which in itself is a very big question mark on the sovereignty and the control what Islamabad at all has anymore on the country of Pakistan.
Where will these dollars go?
It will take time, but it will happen.
See, खाने को आटा नहीं, तेल नहीं, गाड़ी में डालने के लिए there is no, now there will be no salary cuts are happening, payments have not been given to lot of employees. Private companies and manufacturing outfits have dropped production by more than 30%. This is the status. But we've got more inputs coming through where their treachery continues. This military establishment which has an unending access to all sorts of funds, and it's literally sucking away the resources of Pakistan, is continuing with its treachery and propaganda exercise. They just seem to be obsessed with waging this proxy war. 3 wars they have fought directly under conflict where they've all ended up with a bloody nose, and 90,000 of them in chains in 1971. But they continue to wage this propaganda war. They can't fight us directly, so they will use all indirect and devious means. We've just got information that they continue to pump money into this propaganda effort. Pak handlers are running anti-India campaigns abroad. There are toolkits which are emerging on a daily basis, what their social media wings and their propaganda arms want to do. But we are also now given to understand that the ISI handlers are also getting elements, agents to infiltrate media groups in the Middle East and also in the West. These media groups operating in Turkey and Qatar, the Muslim Brotherhood's international headquarters in Turkey, the Muslim Brotherhood receiving financial backing from Qatar, anti-India propaganda that is being spread via social media and also news outlets. So this entire disinformation campaign is something which they are pumping huge amounts of money on. The anti-India propaganda being spread, like I said, via social media news outlets. The reports also suggest, and these are intel reports which have been accessed by our investigations editor Manoj Gupta, that Turkey and Pak have formed an anti-India media front. Pak and Kashmiri journalists linked to anti-India campaign who have left this country and they are operating there in offices there and running these campaigns. Anti-India media front pushed by Turkey-based media outfit called TRT World. Anti-India propaganda pushed online across these Gulf nations. So this propaganda war they continue to indulge in. So the establishment which says that we want an unending pool of access to resources and we'll continue to drain the country at the cost of its people, at the cost of the economy, at the cost of its prestige, because we want to wage a proxy war, General Dhruv Katuch. And there are other nations involved, Turkey and Qatar.
Anand, as far as the information war is concerned, I must concede that as a military man, when I see it, Pakistan has done this remarkably well. In fact, this is the only thing which they appear to have done well. They have beaten India on two counts. One is the information war, and one is the population explosion, the rate they produce children every year. Their population, incidentally, has increased 7 times since independence, which is the fastest growing of any country on earth, and which is also a cause of their downfall right now. But getting down to this information war, it has been ongoing for a very, very long time, and they have spent huge resources in it. The aim is very simple. You know, even if you go to organization like the BBC or the Washington Post, you can bribe people inside that. And Pakistan has been throwing money at various magazines, at groups, at journalists to toe a particular line. That attitude of Pakistan is not going, because on two issues they have completely lost the plot. Their attempt to instigate violence within India has failed completely, and their narrative on Kashmir has failed miserably across the world. So the Kashmir narrative now is a dead horse as far as whatever Pakistan is doing. It has got no credibility at all. But they will continue to instigate a particular vile type of toolkit propaganda, and that toolkit propaganda says that Muslims in India are not safe. Now that is something which is quite surprising, because in a country like Pakistan, the Muslims in Pakistan want to come to India. In a country like Bangladesh, the Muslims of Bangladesh, if given a choice, will leave that country and come to India. But in a country like India, which is so peaceful and stable, there is not one Muslim in India who would like to go and live in either of these two countries or in the Gulf. So, you know, this propaganda of theirs to say that the Muslims in India are not safe is the most hollow. But unfortunately, it carries a little bit of weight in some of these countries. The Arab countries have become more sensible now, more sensitized now. Sensible is the wrong word, and they know the realities. So I don't think the Arab countries are going to fall into such a trap. But Pakistan has support from two major countries. One is Malaysia and one is Turkey. And China, of course, will continue to support them because it suits their agenda. However, as far as India is concerned, I think we are doing quite okay, and the world respects our view. We will continue growing stronger. We don't need to counteract any of this propaganda. The world has got eyes, and they will see the truth for what it is. Anand.
Well, there is the involvement of Qatar also that has come to the fore, and not just with one media outfit, but another media outfit where nearly 50% of the funding goes from Qatar, and they operate in Britain. They have their headquarters there, and this outfit is also clearly running a propaganda machinery against India, and they are actually using a lot of elements and individuals from India to try and wage this disinformation war. Pathikrit Pain, but this money is being funded towards derailing India's, not just image, but also the perception. And these are critical years. This is the year of the G20 leadership for us.
Absolutely. And first of all, for the deep state of Pakistan, their use of terrorism or disinformation warfare as instrument of statecraft, they never depended on the government funds for it. They always had the narco business to take money from, and that's why there was never a shortage of money for them. Secondly, today, Pakistan is exactly doing what they have done from the 1970s at 80s, which means they are doing the dirty job of many other countries who otherwise would want to keep their hands clean. There are many countries today who do not want India to see India rise. Because if you look at G20 presidency, and I am in certain way engaged with one of the engagement groups, the kind of narrative that India is projecting in terms of emergence of India as a solution provider in several fields, the manner in which it is questioning many of the multilateral institutions which fail to stop wars, the manner in which war have become a business of in itself or an end in itself. Many established institutions or industrial complexes who lobbied and made sure that geopolitical tensions can be made business upon, they're not happy with India because India is changing the narrative, and the global south of 120 countries are looking towards India to actually become their voice. So there would be countries, maybe some from the West and some from the Middle East and from the Far East as well, who would try to trigger problems. They may not directly do it, but they will do it with the country which has mastered that art. And that country is Pakistan. And so Pakistan is looking at it as an opportunity, a business opportunity with a dual advantage. If I keep these countries happy by doing the dirty work on behalf of them to pin down India, they might give us money. And at the same time, if something by default happens in India, God forbid, from our perspective, God forbid, then it somehow benefits Pakistan as well. So that's why I say that they will not stop doing it. A weakened Pakistan, a Pakistan on the verge of inflation does not mean that Pakistan will stop doing these things. They would continue to do these things. They would hope for a retribution by India, which they think perhaps might galvanize people of Pakistan to act as one, which today is no more happening. So a weakened Pakistan is an equally dangerous Pakistan, and we should be very aware of it.
Well, in any form, this nation is a headache for anybody who indulges with them or tries to engage with them, and it's a sinkhole. No matter how much money you pump, they just you'll never get anything in return, and nations are realizing that. Perhaps the establishment has also got to realize over in Pakistan that no matter how much they try to become the yes men of nations, other nations, and want to do their bidding, they will continue to remain vassals. They will never continue to, they will never rise in a stature beyond that. And they will never get the kind of money that they're expecting. Their prime minister is on record on video saying, Aage bhi karza, piche bhi karza, upar bhi karza, niche bhi karza. I didn't want to beg, but I have no other option to beg. If a nation's prime minister is using this language in his addresses, in his speeches to his own people, one can understand the state of this country and what it's been reduced to in the last 7.5 decades. General Dhruv Katoj and Pathikrit Pain, thank you very, very much. We're going to take a very short break here on The Nation at 5. Stay with us.
And sober responses, and not by getting agitated by every critical documentary or statement. I want to know from you, ma'am, as one of the signatories to the letter that you released last week, what were you so agitated about this documentary, and is that a better response as opposed to what Mr. Kaju said and I just outlined a moment ago?
I think one has to go into very carefully the reason why the documentary has been made and broadcast at this time. And one has to take on board the complete bias and malafide of the people who have made the documentary. I think that is the most important point, because they are trying to stir up something in India. They're trying to create communal disharmony in India. And I think it is the responsibility of the government to take whatever action they feel is necessary to ensure that such communal harmony doesn't get fanned unnecessarily. I mean, let's take, for example, two facts from the so-called documentary that I would like to raise. First of all, the bias and the malafide comes out because they just have not mentioned the Supreme Court judgment in their documentary. I mean, this is absolutely amazing that the Supreme Court, under the UPA government, has gone into it, has appointed a SIT, has monitored the work, and has given a very detailed judgment. And the documentary finds it unfit even to mention that this judgment has come. Yeah. Secondly, they talk about the British diplomats' report. The British diplomats' report has nothing new that did not appear in the media repeatedly at that time, and which was taken fully on board by the Supreme Court and the SIT during their work. So again, this whole business of saying that a British diplomat, has done this means that, we have to take it on board. So I think this whole question of taking on board, what is the motivation? Why has it been brought out at this time? Mm-hmm. Why is it? Who are the people behind it? We do know, for example, that even in the UK, a member of Parliament, of the British Parliament, a person of Indian origin, has actually written to the Director General of the BBC, raising these very same questions and saying that this documentary is going to harm relations between Hindus and Muslims in the UK as well.
Yeah.
apart from the fact of it trying to harm India-UK relations. So there are very broad ramifications of this when you look into the reason, the maliciousness. And, we have people like the former Foreign Secretary of the UK, Jack Straw, the person who had been completely shown to, support false documents because of the WM weapons of mass destruction reports in Iraq. Now, he not only spoke repeatedly about the British diplomat's report, but then he also said when he came on a Indian platform, oh, Godhra train burning, that's just an accident. I mean, how can a senior person like that talk about something that has been established by the Indian courts, that has been already punished? The people have been, given their sentences and they have completed their sentences, some of them.
Let me go across to Gopal Krishna Agarwal first. So there is a view that, what is the big deal about this documentary by actually doing all of this, not banning it, but technically blocking it from being broadcast, what's happening in JNU, so on and so forth. You're actually giving it more publicity, you're giving it more oxygen than it deserves. Had you decided to ignore this, then perhaps nobody would be talking about it. And now this latest thing where the JNUSU, the Students' Union, is alleging that just before they were to broadcast this documentary, lights have been cut off.
Thing is, Zaka, we have to understand that there is a Tukde gang in the country which leaves no opportunity to undermine India's image at the global level. And at every action or any issue where they can find to undermine the current democratically elected our government and to undermine our institutions, they will take all these opportunity to whatever level they can. So the thing is, the documentary of BBC of after 2 decades in itself with an agenda driven is also an issue. But the thing is, there is a section in the country which is completely discredited by their actions on the what we call about is a Tukde gang. Whether it is JNU or the universities, whether it is Kerala government or Telangana, there is a set of people who are trying to promote this narration. And the second thing is, we have to also understand what our constitution asks the government of the day to do. It says that it is the responsibility of the government, and not only the government, every citizen of this country has the responsibility that it should maintain and authority or respect of the institutions like Supreme Court and all courts, High Court, Supreme Court, even the contempt of court law says that. That the respect of the institution has to be maintained and authority of the institution has to be maintained by everybody.
Sure. Let me ask Sanjay Jha that, the point is that no media organization, BBC or New York Times or whoever it is, no media organization surely is at a better vantage than the Supreme Court of India, and no less than the Supreme Court appointed SIT looked into this matter, and it closed these cases by saying that there was no large-scale conspiracy or inaction or looking the other way by the leadership of the state at that time. I can quote to you the Supreme Court judgment, which basically says it dismissed claims of a larger conspiracy of the 2002 Gujarat riots, ruling in favor of the closure report filed by the Supreme Court SIT in February 2012. It also rejected allegations of criminal conspiracy at the highest level, observing that the inaction or failure of some officials of one section of the state administration cannot be the basis to infer a pre-planned conspiracy by the Gujarat government. Surely, no media organization is above the Supreme Court of India. And this is like I said, I'm quoting from the judgment of the Supreme Court, Sanjay Jha.
Zaka, very pertinent points. Since the Supreme Court is the one where the BJP seems to be taking a lot of its comfort from, they cannot be hypocritical, right? Then we also need to listen to what the Supreme Court had to say about the Gujarat government, insinuating the role of Mr. Modi when they referred to him and his government as Nero. And we all know what Nero was famous for, that the city burned while he looked the other way around. I think it's a very serious castigation of, please, I did not interrupt you, Mr. Agarwal, let me finish. It's a very serious castigation, and frankly, for those who have seen the BBC documentary, that's exactly what the BBC documentary says. Point number 2, the BJP can't have the cake and eat it too. I heard Mr. Gopal Agarwal saying this is 20 years old. For God's sake, your party every day rakes up history of centuries ago. You talk about the freedom movement, you malign Nehruji, etc., that is okay. But 20 years ago, perhaps one of the worst communal riots, which many people called as a state-sponsored genocide, you can't walk away from it simply because 20 years have gone. Third point, Zaka, this is a British Foreign Office investigation. This is a formal British government investigation. This is not about BBC. Let's understand, let's make a distinction very clear. BBC is a medium. I know the right-wing trollers are going hammer and tongs after BBC, but this is the British government. So Rishi Sunak may have...
One sec. I just want to be clear on the facts. I just want to be clear on the facts. This is a set of communications, a report that was sent by the British High Commission here in India at the time 2002. I think Jack Straw was the Foreign Secretary of Britain. You've seen what Kanwal Sibal, who was India's Foreign Secretary, who has said that there was one particular diplomat who was going out of his way to do this and then sort of circulate this amongst the EU envoys at that time, to which a démarche was also issued to the British High Commission and to this particular diplomat. There was this report. It was a classified report. It was kept there for 20 years. The BBC had access to this report and they broadcast parts of it. But that's not the only part of this documentary. And that report certainly is not, the gospel truth as far as 2002 is concerned. So I'm coming back to that question that I asked you. Are you then saying that the Supreme Court erred in its judgment? Because surely, the court went into every detail of what happened in 2002.
Back on the Nation at 5 with news just coming through. A storm has erupted across the country over the BBC documentary around the 2002 Gujarat riots, with political outfits who have been wanting to bait Prime Minister Narendra Modi, going back to this entire failed bogey and obsession, that is the 2002 bogey. Despite the Supreme Court verdicts, after the reports of stone pelting in the campuses at JNU, a high-voltage drama has erupted at the Jamia Millia Islamia University over the screening of this entire docu-series. The Delhi police has detained 4 student activists of the SFI. The detentions come after the Jamia administration issued a notice asking students to refrain from screening this documentary. Meanwhile, security personnel and drones have actually been deployed outside the university campus. Remember, the centre has blocked screenings of the documentary under Rule 16 of the IT rules. Shireen now joins us. Shireen Elizabeth is right outside the Jamia Millia University. Shireen, what's the situation on ground? Well, before...
At the moment, around 3 students have in fact been detained who were belonging to the SFI Jamia unit. So overall, since morning, around 7 students have in fact been detained who were planning to screen the BBC documentary. Let me go straight across to Shahir over here, who is one of the SFI unit member. Now what? Now 7 people students have been detained. So what is going to be the SFI plan now?
Actually, we are trying for the best possible ways to screen the documentary. If there is such a possibility, even tonight we are yet to decide the decision. So if there is any possibility, we'll go on with the screening of the documentary.
You have seen the kind of violence that happened in JNU last night. Yeah. The INB ministry has blocked the documentary. What is the need for the SFI or the JNU students at the moment for this, forceful screening that you're saying?
Actually, as every student organization is saying, it's a matter of right to freedom of expression and right to freedom of speech. If the government is curbing the basic right, we have to struggle. We have to struggle a lot for attaining all the rights. So that's the main intention behind the screening of this documentary. And if
of speech the Jamia and freedom of expression argument coming to the fore, Shireen, we've got
documentary.
We've got news coming through where Jamia VC Najma Akhtar has said that the SFI wants to disturb peace on the campus. The administration will never allow this behavior. Jamia will take action against students if necessary for disrupting peace on the campus. So very clearly a position taken by the Jamia VC Najma Akhtar, saying the SFI is there with the intent to disturb peace on the campus and that will not be allowed. Shireen now with us from Jamia. So they're using the freedom of speech and freedom of expression argument at this point, Shireen. But this is something which is devoid of facts, goes against the ruling of our courts. And that which the government believes is done with a nefarious intent.
Well, Well, those were the questions that was in fact asked to these students. Because I want to get more voices for you, for the students, let me go across to Leah also, who is the fraternity member. You know, the government says this is propaganda. This is nothing, all false intentions are being shown in the movie. But why is it that the SFI still wants to, or the fraternity member that you belong to, still wants to go ahead with the screening?
Because the ruling party of India currently is the whole BJP government. They are trying to hide every fact about what has happened. They have done a lot back in history. So we know, we have read a lot of books and we know what has happened.
So you believe this documentary is not a propaganda?
Ask her, has she read the Supreme Court judgment?
Not at all. It's just a documented form of the
Point is, it's the Supreme Court judgments that they are going against.
Law of the land. We have seen the apex court, the Supreme Court. Even they have not. It's a.
They have exonerated after 16 years of this case being in court. Shireen, have they even got the facts right? The SFI.
Because we are students of Jamia, we know what has happened. We study all these things in our.
So what did the court rule? Does she have the ruling of the honourable court? I don't want to get into an argument with students who are pushing a political narrative. But Shireen, the simple question is, have they read the court judgment? A case that's gone on for 16 years. The SIT has exonerated Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who was the then Chief Minister. The Supreme Courts have found no grounds. They have actually said that it was done with an ulterior motive and a devious design as part of their judgment by vested interests and disgruntled officials. This is what, and they had actually said that these people should be acted against and an inquiry should be conducted and action should be taken against them for false propaganda and spreading misinformation. That's the top court's judgment. So do the the SFI not respect that, and does this documentary carry that docu-series? That's the point. That's why this documentary was banned, because it was said that it came with a very, very devious intent and a propaganda machinery. That's what it was. That's why under Rule 16 of the IT Act, the government banned it, or the INB ministry has said that this docu-series should not be publicly broadcast or screened. Moving forth from this to yet another news break, ladies and gentlemen, we are getting you the inside details of the plot behind this BBC docu-series. As top intelligence sources are revealing, a Pak hand. And once again, it's the propaganda wing that comes through. Pakistan pushing an anti-Modi campaign ahead of the G20 meeting in New Delhi. Bilawal Bhutto elevated as Pakistan's key figure in the Kashmir campaign. Bilawal Bhutto, ironically, has got an invite for the SCO meet in May. Bilawal Bhutto targeted Nawaz Sharif for being pro-Modi. The DGISI, Lieutenant General Nadeem Anjum, has close ties with Asif Ali Zardari. The DGISI facilitating Bilawal Bhutto to raise Kashmir issue or the Kashmir bogey, the K narrative across the globe. Pak military operating a special anti-India propaganda cell, and the Pak Army media cell operates over 250,000 fake social media accounts. Reports suggest the ISI provided material to the BBC for this docu-series. The ISI issued a directive to Pak media to actively air the docu-series. Top PPP source claims party has also close ties with the Congress party in our country. The PPP source claims it is working with the Congress on track 2 anti-Modi diplomacy. The PPP source claims Bilawal Bhutto is in close contact with top Congress leaders. So serious allegations now coming through, and serious information about nexus and why these lines are similar and they're being parroted. Tushar Gupta, senior editor, Swarajya, with us, and Ambassador Rajiv Dogra, former diplomat, also with us. Ambassador Rajiv Dogra, this propaganda war, info war being waged. But why rake up 2002 again, despite the entire thorough legal process, the vetting, the investigations, and multiple agencies and also the courts of our country exonerating those who the narrative spinners believe should be the prime accused?
In fact, that is the question that must be asked repeatedly. Why has BBC decided to broadcast this documentary at this stage, 20 years after the entire issue had been examined, as you said very rightly, by the top court of India, Supreme Court of India, and they have come to a decision which must be respected. So, number one, BBC in violation of a legal judgment that has been made in this country. Second, British have been well known throughout history and presently for their deviousness and duplicity. So I'm not surprised about the timing of the documentary, because they wanted to have the maximum ill effect just before 26th January. other thing is that perhaps they also wanted to embarrass their own prime minister. He's just taken over. Rishi Sunak has just taken over as prime minister. And soon after that, they are putting out this documentary probably without his knowledge. The third thing is, again, a coincidence that a Pakistani origin member of parliament, the very next day after the first part was shown on BBC television, the very next day he asked a motivated question in parliament, to which Prime Minister Sunak said very clearly that I don't agree with this characterization. So obviously BBC's motivation was twofold. Number one, to embarrass their own prime minister. Number two, to have a division in Indo-British relationship, which is going on smoothly or reasonably smoothly. But the larger question is that if they are so keen on investigating issues which are long past, why didn't they take care of the British crimes in Iraq? Or why didn't they take heed of Prince Harry's statement that he killed 24 civilians in Afghanistan because he wanted to remove some chess pieces from the chessboard? Like Prince Harry, many other Britishers would have killed innocent Afghans, like in a playful manner. So, has any BBC series been done on that? So, I think what we are seeing is hypocrisy of the lowest order or the highest order, as the case may be. The second thing is their Prime Minister, David Cameron, a couple of years back when he was the Prime Minister, he said multiculturalism is dead in Britain. So if multiculturalism is dead in Britain, what right do they have to question a country which has thriving multiculturalism, not just this year or in 2002, but for centuries altogether? And that multiculturalism is not dead, it is thriving.
Point well made, Ambassador Rajiv Dogra. Tushar, your point of view?
And such is the exuberance of youth that they'll come on camera and they say, we have read all the books, we know what kind of dictatorship we have for a government, but they will not read the Supreme Court judgment, which is the most important document in the last 20 years when it comes to the 2002 riots. They have not read it. And such was their confidence when they were speaking to one of your colleagues on camera that we've read the book, so we know. And my thought is that this documentary, beyond its political futility, is now going to be peddled by the usual foot soldiers, be it in some universities, be it some radical elements, be it by the likes of PFI, to create a law and order situation in India. Clearly, they have nothing against the Prime Minister or this current government when it comes to corruption, when it comes to economic growth or welfare. So now they are raking up an old issue. They want to discard what the law of the land says, what the apex court of the land says. They want to discard everything. They want to put a documentary together, a fake narrative, and they want to use innocent foot soldiers like the young kids in universities and probably create a law and order situation. That is where my worry is. And also the Jamia, one of the Jamia professors, or rather the chairperson, has already said that this is going to disturb the discipline on the campus. Now people are looking through it, that this is not about a political statement. This is not about, talking about actual events that happened during 2002. This is about creating a law and order situation. And this needs to be dealt with very, very strictly.
And with a hard hand, because they are planning anarchy, and that's why drones are there. 7 students have been apprehended, and no ruckus will be tolerated, is what the Jamia Millia VC has very clearly said. Ambassador Rajiv Dogra and Tushar, thank you very, very much. I've run out of time. We've got a lot of ad breaks to cover up on The Nation at 5 this evening. So I'm compelled to take a very short break. The final segment after this break. Stay with us, please.
Critical documentary or statement. I want to know from you, ma'am, as one of the signatories to the letter that you released last week, what were you so agitated about this documentary, and is that a better response as opposed to what Mr. Kaju said and I just outlined a moment ago?
I think one has to go into very carefully the reason why the documentary has been made and broadcast at this time, and one has to take on board the complete bias and malafide of the people who have made the documentary. I think that is the most important point, because they are trying to stir up something in India. They're trying to create communal disharmony in India, and I think it is the responsibility of the government to take whatever action they feel is necessary to ensure that such communal harmony doesn't get fanned unnecessarily. I mean, let's take, for example, two facts from the so-called documentary that I would like to raise. First of all, the bias and the malafide comes out because they just have not mentioned the Supreme Court judgment in their documentary. I mean, this is absolutely amazing that the Supreme Court, under the UPA government, has gone into it, has appointed a SIT, has monitored the work, and has given a very detailed judgment. And the documentary finds it unfit even to mention that this judgment has come.
Yeah.
Secondly, they talk about the British diplomats report. The British diplomats report has nothing new that did not appear in the media repeatedly at that time, and which was taken fully on board by the Supreme Court and the SIT during their work. So again, this whole business of saying that a British diplomat, has done this means that, we have to take it on board. So I think this whole question of taking on board, what is the motivation? Why has it been brought at this time?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it? Who are the people behind it? We do know, for example, that even in the UK, a member of Parliament, of the British Parliament, a person of Indian origin, has actually written to the Director General of the BBC, raising these very same questions and saying that this documentary is going to harm relations between Hindus and Muslims in the UK as well.
Yeah.
Apart from the fact of it trying to harm India-UK relations. So there are very broad ramifications of this when you look into the reason, the maliciousness. And, we have people like the former Foreign Secretary of the UK, Jack Straw, the person who had been completely shown to, support false documents because of the WMD, Weapons of Mass Destruction report in Iraq. Now, he not only spoke repeatedly about the British diplomats' report, but then he also said when he came on a Indian platform, Godhra train burning, that's just an accident. I mean, how can a senior person like that talk about something that has been established by the Indian courts, that has been already punished? The people have been, given their sentences and they have completed their sentences, some of them.
Let me go across to Gopal Krishna Agarwal first. So there is a view that, what is the big deal about this documentary by actually doing all of this, not banning it, but technically blocking it from being broadcast, what's happening in JNU, so on and so forth. You're actually giving it more publicity, you're giving it more oxygen than it deserves. Had you decided to ignore this, then perhaps nobody would be talking about it. And now this latest thing where the JNUSU, the Students' Union, is alleging that just before they were to broadcast this documentary, lights have been cut off.
Thing is, Zaka, we have to understand that there is a Tukde gang in the country which leaves no opportunity to undermine India's image at the global level. And at every action or any issue where they can find to undermine the current democratically elected our government and to undermine our institutions, they will take all these opportunity to whatever level they can. So the thing is, the documentary of BBC of after 2 decades in itself with an agenda driven is also an issue. But the thing is, there is a section in the country which is completely discredited by their actions on the what we call about is a Tukde gang. Whether it is JNU or the universities, whether it is Kerala government or Telangana, there is a set of people who are trying to promote this narration. And the second thing is, we have to also understand what our constitution asks the government of the day to do. It says that it is the responsibility of the government, and not only the government, every citizen of this country has the responsibility that it should maintain and authority or respect of the institutions like Supreme Court and all courts, High Court, Supreme Court, even the contempt of court law says that. That the respect of the institution has to be maintained and authority of the institution has to be maintained by everybody.
Sure. Let me ask Sanjay Jha that, the point is that no media organization, BBC or New York Times or whoever it is, no media organization surely is at a better vantage than the Supreme Court of India, and no less than the Supreme Court appointed SIT looked into this matter and it closed these cases by saying that there was no large-scale conspiracy or inaction or looking the other way by the leadership of the state at that time. I can quote to you the Supreme Court judgment. which basically says it dismissed claims of a larger conspiracy of the 2002 Gujarat riots, ruling in favor of the closure report filed by the Supreme Court SIT in February 2012. It also rejected allegations of criminal conspiracy at the highest level, observing that the inaction or failure of some officials of one section of the state administration cannot be the basis to infer a pre-planned conspiracy by the Gujarat government. Surely, no media organization is above the Supreme Court of India. And this is like I said, I'm quoting from the judgment of the Supreme Court, Sanjay Jha.
Zaka, very pertinent points. Since the Supreme Court is the one where the BJP seems to be taking a lot of its comfort from, they cannot be hypocritical, right? Then we also need to listen to what the Supreme Court had to say about the Gujarat government, insinuating at the role of Mr. Modi when they referred to him and his government as Nero. And we all know what Nero was famous for, that the city burned while he looked the other way around. I think it's a very serious castigation of please, I did not interrupt you, Mr. Agarwal. Let me finish. It's a very serious castigation. And frankly, for those who have seen the BBC documentary, that's exactly what the BBC documentary says. Point number two, the BJP can't have the cake and eat it too. I heard Mr. Gopal Agarwal saying this is 20 years old. For God's sake, your party every day rakes up history of centuries ago. You talk about the freedom movement, you malign Nehruji, etc. That is okay. But 20 years ago, perhaps one of the worst communal riots, which many people called as a state-sponsored genocide, you can't walk away from it simply because 20 years have gone. Third point, Zaka, this is a British Foreign Office investigation. This is a formal British government investigation. This is not about BBC. Let's understand, let's make a distinction very clear. BBC is a medium. I know the right-wing trollers are going hammer and tongs after BBC, but this is the British government. So Rishi Sunak may have...
One sec. I just want to be clear on the facts. I just want to be clear on the facts. This is a set of communications, a report that was sent by the British High Commission here in India at the time 2002. I think Jack Straw was the Foreign Secretary of Britain. You've seen what Kanwal Sibal, who was India's Foreign Secretary, who has said that there was one particular diplomat who was going out of his way to do this and then sort of circulate this amongst the EU envoys at that time, to which a démarche was also issued to the British High Commission and to this particular...
Back on the Nation at 5 with a reaction coming in from the External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar. Dr. Jaishankar has not taken kindly to the kind of words that Mike Pompeo has used in his book. Former US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, over his comments on his predecessor Sushma Swaraj in the book, Pompeo wrote, "On the Indian side, my original counterpart was not an important player on the Indian foreign policy team. Instead, I worked much more closely with the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, a close and trusted confidant of Prime Minister Narendra Modi." Dr. Jaishankar has said that he deplores the disrespectful colloquialism used for Sushma Swaraj ji. Abhishek Jha now joins us with more. Abhishek, very clearly, Mike Pompeo and his position, for somebody who didn't even know, who was confused over whether Sushma Swaraj ji was a lady or a gent, that this is also an issue. Can what US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says in his book be taken quite literally?
Clearly it looks like it could be a trick to, more people to see his book or buy his book. But clearly the kind of references that he has used for a foreign minister of a country that the USA calls as his friend, and at a time of peak tension that was going on between India and Pakistan, is something very undiplomatic, even if you can say. Jaishankar, External Affairs Minister Jaishankar has termed his wording used for Sushma Swaraj as well, then the Foreign Minister for India, as disrespectful, and he has said that he has seen those paragraphs about Srimati Sushma Swaraj ji. He has said, and I'm quoting, "I always held her in great esteem and had an exceptionally close and warm relationship with her. I deplored the comment." So not only he has deplored the comment made by the former State Secretary of USA, but he has also said that Sushma Swaraj was...
Right. Thank you for your inputs, Abhishek. With that, we've come to a close of this edition of The Nation at 5. Zaka ready with Viewpoint.
Good evening. In a significant development, India has now formally extended an invitation to Pakistan, specifically from India's Foreign Minister